Okay, I've requested to go second because I remember in graduate school I typed a chapter of Bruce Michelson's dissertation, so did it get on time? Mark Twain at play. He's been at it for so long, he should have the last word of the comments.
It'll be short.
So to frame the talk, since most of you probably don't have the abstract in front of you, The Gilded Age was our nation's best political novel, according to Garry Wills. No matter what craziness pops up in America, Wills claimed, I find it described beforehand by Twain. Twain's observations about how incivility undermines representative democracy provide a roadmap for the workings of the political corruption from his time to our own. The morally bankrupt politicians, hapless citizens, marginal swindlers, mainstream scoundrels, Twain described with humor and condemnation, continue to populate our evolving socio-political landscapes, giving the lie to our national patriotic myths of one person, one vote. It's worthwhile to try to keep history from repeating itself, but it's not worthwhile to try to keep it from repeating itself, given man's character, Twain said. In other words, men will keep doing the same thing. What will change are their circumstances and their condition. And so Twain saw circumstance as something that moves by a law of its own. It's things like railways, steamships, telegraphs, computers, satellites, artificial intelligence. And it creates conditions, inequalities usually generated by wealth and power, that we discover, to our grief and dismay, have eroded civil rights and encouraged autocracy, which sounds like today to me. To frame the talk, civility in this slide is just simply understood as acting for the common good. Incivility is undermining the common good for your own limited purposes. The talk will be in 4 unequal parts, each one set around a person, a neologism, and a circumstance. The first part will be about Tom Beecher and the Civil War, because there's things to correct about what was said about him at that time, and his incredible citizenship. Second part, Teddy Roosevelt, and only as a cameo for comparison to Trump, contrast and compare. And then Trump 1, the attack on the Capitol, and Trump 2, Doge. So, and given that this is Beecher's time, he gets the lion's share. And he also, there are things you have to go down more into minutiae to explain what he did during the Civil War. So, I guess this is up to me to rank.
Yep.
Okay, just to remind you of who the Beechers were, you have Tom up at your top left. Okay, and starting with and Lyman, the father in the middle, starting at to Tom's right, we have William the Unlucky. He was married, no cake, no cards, no company, nothing to celebrate. So he was the unlucky. And then Edward was a scholar. He was valedictorian at Yale. And then Charles the Clumsy, he was a musician and a composer and kind of a transcendentalist. And then Henry Ward, called the most famous man in America. He hassled Lincoln about abolition, but he also served Lincoln in Europe to keep it allied with the North. And then down at the bottom we have, of course, George, the literary, who died by his own hand. For the older girls, we have Catherine, who Lyman called his best boy. She wrote 20 works. She established the National Women's Education Association and the discipline of home ec. She never married after her fiancé died in a shipwreck off Ireland. So, and then there's Mary the homemaker. She was the one who stayed home. But her granddaughter was Charlotte Perkins Gilman, the economist, feminist economist, who wrote the Yellow Wallpaper about the dreadful rest cure. The male gynecologist, Dr. Weir Mitchell, had treated her too. Mitchell also treated Tom Beecher's wife when she died, his first wife when she died in childbirth. So he doesn't have a good record. And then Harriet, who of course wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin and 34 other works. The children of the second wife, Harriet King Porter Beecher. At the top there's Tom, that I think we should call the compassionate. And then Isabella the suffragist. And then James, who finally redeemed himself as a soldier. Twain wrote, Tom Beecher was one of the best men I've ever known. He was also one of the best citizens I have ever known. To the end of his days, he was looked up to in town by both sinner and saint as a man whose judgment in matters concerning the welfare of the town was better and sounder than anyone else's, and whose purity and integrity were unassailable. He was beloved and revered by the citizenship. Now, the only biography that actually is focused only on Tom was written here by Myra Glenn from this place, and it's meticulously researched, but she did believe some things that were said about Beecher that I think have been shown not to be true. She questioned his quick friendship with Ella Walcott, who was a librarian at Park Church for years and lived next door to Julia Beecher, the second wife, and Tom. And she was absolutely Tom Beecher's confidant, along with Julia Beecher. So the question is why? And the second thing she questions is his behavior in the Civil War. He enlisted in 141st New York Regiment for 4 short months. He tried to sign up as infantry. They said, no, you have to be chaplain. So he said, fine, I'll be chaplain. And one of his fellow officers wrote to his sister Isabella in Elmira, and he said that he accused Tom Beecher of behavior unbecoming of a chaplain. So, this you recognize as the water cure. Glenn writes, of the patients at the water cure, they were both boarders and patients. So Glenn writes, one such patient was Ella Walcott, the daughter of a well-to-do New England businessman, born in 1823 in Litchfield, Connecticut. Ella Walcott, that should be 1828. Ella Walcott was 4 years younger than Tom Beecher, an articulate, cultivated woman. She never married but pursued various activities, including nursing. In 1856, Walcott was suffering from an undisclosed malady. Like other ailing women, she sought out Rachel Gleason, who specialized in treating female diseases. By the end of that year, Walcott had recuperated sufficiently to live with her father in Rochester, New York. Some corrections there. She was born in Windsor, Connecticut. She suffered, on her nursing records, they say it was dermatology. Okay. Her father lived in Jacksonville, Illinois. He was from Windsor, Connecticut, but went to Jacksonville, Illinois. And her uncle, Horace Hooker, is the one who lived in Rochester. She didn't really know him at the time she went to visit him in about 1857. Glenn continues, it was during her Elmira stay that Walcott and Beecher began their lifelong friendship. Well, no, it began 15 years earlier in Jacksonville, Illinois, where she lived most of her young life, and Tom Beecher spent 4 years in college, and his older brother spent 14 years as the president of the college. So they didn't meet at the water cure. Glenn goes on, marriage to Julia did not prevent Thomas from cultivating a closer friendship with Walcott. That's true, but it turns out the three were related, actually, through families, as I'll explain. And Glenn goes on, Beecher urged Ella Walcott to move to Elmira and was disappointed when she and her father did not do so in the late 1850s. Apparently, Beecher did not find it unseemly for a newly married minister to urge an unmarried woman friend to uproot herself to live near him. Well, that's difficult to explain, but in fact, Ella's father died in 1858. His estate in Jacksonville was worth $100,000, which must have been quite a bit of money at that time. However, it was tied up in real estate. So Ella's sister was writing her, you got a penny pinch, we have no money. So Ella said, well, I'll buy just a cabin by the water pier here. She knew the people, she liked the people. The choice was to go to Jacksonville and be a fifth wheel. So she chose, she, like Tom, were getting out of Dodge when they went to the water cure. He was escaping the death of his first wife and that sorrow. She was escaping for independence from Jacksonville. Okay. So why were they such good friends? I explained that Tom knew her whole family. She had four half-sisters who were older, 3 brothers, 1 younger brother from the 3rd marriage. But she was getting out of Dodge because in 1846, her beloved brother, who is named Elizur, was getting married. And she thought he was 11 years older than she did. When she lost her mother, she thought he understood her, kind of a soulmate. But it turns out that's not quite true. She wrote in her diary, he's married, he's gone to his bright home, and I shall see his smile and hear his voice no more, but now and then at an accidental meeting. This morning I was happy, for all was bright and pleasant. She looked smiling on me. It was that I that arranged the flowers in her soft hair, and she laid her hand gently on mine. But he, when I kissed the bride, he turned coldly away. I felt my eyes grow dim, and that horrible pain came back to me, and for a moment I was powerless. It was but a moment. I ruled that pain. Well, it turns out the woman that her beloved brother married was Tom Beecher's cousin. So, because his aunt and uncle King, from his mother's side, had moved to Jacksonville, and they brought a sister who lived in Amherst, and the beloved brother married her. So that's why Ella's getting out of town. Her beloved brother is married to Tom Beecher's cousin, I guess. Her only full sister got married that year, and her father had remarried and brought in the headmistress of the school Ella went to as the new bride. So all those things drove her out of Jacksonville. This is Jacksonville in the West, why everybody went there. In the 1830s, there was the Yale Illinois Association. About 12 Yale divinity students went to Jacksonville to set up religion, abolition, education. So they formed Elmira College, that Tom Beecher's brother was president of. Another group that immigrated there was Ella Walcott's father from Windsor. They were rich businessmen. And Ella Walcott, if you look, this is right on the abolition route, and you'll see a red dot is where Hannibal is. The next kind of blue dot is where Alton is. That's where Elijah Lovejoy had an abolition press that was destroyed and he was murdered. Then you have Jacksonville. Then you have Springfield, where Lincoln was. So it was a real hotbed of activity. aside from being the Athens of the West. Edward Beecher, and Elihu Walcott were thick as thieves. They started a liberal congregational church that got them in trouble. They started the Anti-Slavery Society of Jacksonville, and Edward Beecher was president of that. So they were very much movers and shakers, and there's no way when Tom was at college there, they wouldn't have known all this. Okay, when we get to the Civil War, Ella signed up with Dorothea Dix to be a nurse, and she was heading that way the whole time anyway. Julia sent supplies from Park Church, as we'll see. It was central to that. Tom and Jim mustered into the Army. Unfortunately, Tom mustered in early as chaplain, and it's requested. His younger brother Jim, who he always took care of, mustered in after that. He was first chaplain in the Brooklyn Brigade that Henry Ward had, and then he wanted to be a soldier. So he did some training and suddenly shows up in the 141st. Well, this was not welcome. When he showed up as a lieutenant colonel, it meant that Lieutenant Colonel Bonham got kicked out. You could only have one, I guess. So people were getting angry. And this is the operant word here is Copperhead. Those are Democrats who were peace Democrats, and they undercut abolition. The ambience of the 141st was terrible. Biographer Glenn assumes Tom Beecher got his brother in the command, but a letter he wrote to Ella Walcott suggests that probably wasn't the case. He wrote to Ella, the greatest evil of war is that it necessitates idleness and waste. Well, work comes in avalanches or not at all. He reminds himself 50 times a day, I'm chaplain, not in charge. She should remind herself the same. James, he claimed, was finally honorably put in the 141st because he suggests he was put in by Morgan, the top general. He goes on, our captains are all red-mouthed in chase of office and claim that all vacancies were elective. Chaplain told him Major General Edward Morgan commands. Then he says, poor Jim, his shoulder is under the mountain, let him heave. Our desertions have begun. Captain Hathaway believes in humoring the men. I believe, and so on and so forth. So you see, Ella, I'm drawing $3 a day for standing by to bury the dead and see a regiment rot because the colonel is a lawyer and a big-hearted man, but no soldier. Hathaway was from here. Beecher was at Laurel Station. You can see, this is Laurel Station. This is Miners Hill. And this is Lookout Point at the very bottom of Maryland. So at Laurel Station, it was a guard post. There was the one railroad to the north. There was the one telegraph to the north there. There was a bridge over the river. Washington, D.C. is surrounded by Southern sympathizing cities and states. So it was an important guard post, but that's what it was. That was fine until the 141st got moved to Miners Hill. Okay, that's George McClellan, called the Great Tortoise, the delayer. He's the one that Lincoln thought if he had pursued Lee early in the war would have been over. But he didn't. He delayed, and he was a Democrat who was peace Democrat. So when they moved to Miners Hill, Tom Beecher got worried. Lincoln had already gotten rid of McClellan, November 5th, I think it was. On November 24th, the 141st was moved to Miners Hill. And up at Miners Hill, they're guarding Washington. They're up on a block guarding Washington. So Tom Beecher, that had a lot of accusations about Hathaway. Hathaway's notes are here at Park Church, or in the Historical Museum. Tom Beecher had to decide what to do. So he didn't undercut his commander. He rather resigned his command. He went to Washington, D.C., and he met with Lincoln. And he's introduced by Zenas Robbins, who was the patent attorney for Lincoln, but also the police commissioner of Washington, D.C. To permit me to present my personal friend, Reverend Thomas Beecher. Mr. Beecher desires to make a communication confidentially to you, which in my judgment is important and worthy of immediate attention. He asks at most 10 minutes of your time, and I'll pledge my life on the loyalty of his heart, the soundness of his judgment, and the accuracy of his statements. Mr. Beecher is, brother of Henry Ward. And the note that survives from his meeting with Lincoln is, one, that the 141st Regiment, New York, be under no circumstances detailed for provost guard duty in the city of Washington. And second, that Colonel Commanding S.G. Hathaway, Jr. be examined forthwith as to his fitness to command. Both Hathaway and Jim Beecher would be gone within a month. So that's what happened. Okay, for Teddy Roosevelt, okay, Roosevelt was self-centered like Trump, and he filled the news like Trump, but he could take a joke, and he did a lot of good things. He created national parks, he did civil service reform, he did trust busting. So he had a lot of things. He's like Trump in his self-centeredness, but otherwise he's a good civic citizen. Trump, on the other hand, the attack on the Capitol, the way it's explained, the people who thought that Trump was Baby Blink or Humpty Dumpty or Humpty Trumpty, barefaced lies, ended up saying, we were really broadsided on this one. What happened with the first attack on the Capitol was the technology had changed so that unidirectional news now became circular news, and people were choosing their own things that they wanted to focus on, and so conspiracy theories began circulating. The neologism that was developed was hyperstition. It's hype connected with superstition that's put into a feedback loop so that people keep getting refed the things from the same sources that can be controlled from the outside. This word for the second Trump term, the operant word is enshittification. It's sort of an involuntary servitude, or it's the wasteland of surveillance and extraction that we're now caught in. Dr. O, who wrote the book Enshittification, and it was the word for the year last year in one place, says, it's not just you. The internet is getting worse fast. The services we rely on, we once loved, they're turning into piles of shit all at once. Worse, the digital is merging with the physical, which means the same forces that are wrecking our platforms are wrecking our homes and our cars and the places we work and shop. The world is increasingly made up of computers we put our bodies into and computers we put into our bodies. So a few examples of what that is. There's the Civility Industrial Complex, a $200 million a year business following the demonstrations on campuses, both the left up against Gaza genocide and the right with Charlie Kirk. Dozens of organizations now will sell us packages so we can learn to tell students how to foster civil discourse or viewpoint diversity or dialogue across difference. Then there's the National Design Studio, a temporary White House office established by executive order in August 2025 under America by Design initiative, led by Joe Gabia, who is the Airbnb fellow. And the chief technician is, if you remember Big Balls from Doge, he's now the chief technician, and they're going to put everything in login.gov. That's your social security, your global entry, your everything. So I'll give you one more example. Okay, finally there's surveillance pricing. Uses consumer data to set prices for individual shoppers, often by using large-scale data collection and artificial intelligence, so they can charge us different prices depending on what our income is. So, Doge was supposed to self-delete July 4th. Clearly it did not. It's embedded and metastasized in the system. It's just not called Doge anymore. Thank you.